Now we're going to have a few words from Lorraine with Boom. Thank you, Lorraine.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if I need a microphone. However, just in case those folks back there can't hear, as mentioned, and thank you again for the opportunity to say a couple of words, Boom does provide all of you as members of AEG and all of your employees access to Boom through your membership at no cost. Boom provides employers like Suncor, Halliburton, Synovus, Shell, Calgary Police Association, and many others to the tune of almost 500,000 employees that we serve today, access to better pricing on things that you have to have, like home and auto insurance, eyeglasses, vitamins, utilities, etc., through to things that you might want to have, like those flights around the world to over 700 destinations, car rentals, hotels, clothes, skincare, hair, ... You name it, it's in there. So if you would like some more information, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to one of the great team at AEG, and we'll figure out how to get you started. It's very easy. We take care of all the work for you. So hopefully you have some questions and you can let me know. Thanks.
We actually have several testimonials from our members, but our amazing operations manager has a personal one. So go ahead, Paul.
So for anyone I didn't meet at the door, hi, I'm Paul, I'm the operations manager. So a lot of the time I talk to you by email, but I met Lorraine back in an event in March, and she told me about the amazing home insurance deals that you get through AEG and the Boom Rewards. And so sure enough, about 2 weeks ago, my home insurance came up for renewal, and I checked into it, and it ended up being 40% cheaper. And so it's, I think, roughly about $1,800 cheaper that I'm saving every year on my home insurance. So, thank you, Lorraine.
Awesome, Paul. There's lots of good testimonials like that, and he is a deep dive researcher, so he knows. Awesome. Now we're going to have our member spotlight with one of our newest members. We're going to welcome Robin and Al with MS Environmental Solutions. Yay, so exciting.
Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone, AG members. I'm Al Housko from MS Environmental Solutions, Key Account Manager at MS Environmental. I work mostly with the mining sector in BC, and we've recently joined Alberta Enterprise Group, and we're here today to tell you about what we do and our mission.
I'm Robin Ruddock. I'm the VP Sales and Marketing for MS Enviro. We're headquartered in Tappan, BC. We've recently expanded to Alberta. Our mission is to help industries like mining, construction, forestry, transportation, with performance and environmental sustainable goals, with 4 product solutions. So dust control and road stabilization and biodegradable lubricants, we're going to talk a little bit about today. And then we also do de-icing and anti-icing and diesel exhaust.
So let's begin talking about chlorides, also known as road salts, which happen to be used year-round for dust control and de-icing across many industries, and they are causing some serious problems. They corrode and damage infrastructure, they harm ecosystems, they have huge downstream costs. Can anyone remember something that happened in the last year regarding road salts in Calgary, about 1 year ago?
The water main break.
It's true.
That's correct.
That's the Bearspaw Calgary water main break in June. It turns out that high chloride levels in the soil cause micro cracking and wire snapping, leading to a massive failure that disrupted water, as you all know, and cost tens of millions of dollars to fix. We see this as an opportunity for Alberta to adopt safer alternatives.
And we have the solution. So we provide non-toxic, non-fluoride dust suppressants and de-icing products that actually work better than their chemical counterparts and simultaneously protect the environment. Our dust suppressants are used across many different industries, so they reduce airborne particulate, which is both a health concern and also bad for equipment. So municipal roads, rural roads, mining haul roads, airstrips, unpaved helipads. But the industry that we've had the most uptake in is mining.
We've already made a big impact in BC's mining sector, especially with dust control. We also do de-icing, as we mentioned. On the major mine sites here, Highland Valley Copper, it's one of the biggest mines in Canada. They did testing last year and expanded the test and went into adoption this year. Also with Galore Creek, Shaft Creek, and Tulsequa, they use our product for helipads and airstrips. And Newmont, Brucejack Mine, way up north, they've gone from testing and using it in their camp for dust control. Elk Valley Resources used to be a tech. They sold out to a group. There's 4 mines there. Green Hills Operations, they're one of our biggest users. We use it on access road, haul road, pit road, piles, the dust, coal piles. Fording River has used it on their access roads, and Elkview has used it on their piles as well. Some of our newest clients, New Gold, New Afton Mine, just out of Kamloops, it's an underground mine. They use it on dust control underground. KSM, it will be literally one of the largest mines in the world when it gets going. They use it on their helipad, our dust control product on their helipad, right at the top of their camp. And Gibraltar Mine, it's been around for, 50, 60 years. They're doing a test actually next week. So we're moving forward with them. Yeah, this shows what's possible for Alberta. We see opportunity here in mining. There's lots of coal mines in Alberta, and the oil sands development, and a vast network of unpaved roads. As you know, there's lots of unpaved roads in Alberta. And it's a constant challenge to control dust. We already have many clients in Alberta, from quarries in Canmore. And in fact, we're doing some industrial dust control in Calgary this Saturday.
So now let's shift to talking about biodegradable lubricants. We all use and produce a lot of oil, not just in our daily lives for maintaining our vehicles, but also in almost every industry that operates machinery. So construction, mining, forestry. So when spills do happen, they inevitably end up in groundwater, lakes, rivers, and cause serious and long-lasting damage to the environment and ecosystems. Mineral oil spills in these industries are a huge problem. They can cost tens of millions to clean up and also mean large fines for the companies responsible for the spill or release. In the news, we often hear about oil making its way into landscapes and rivers, which results not only in the devastation of the local area, but can mean significant impacts, not just monetarily to the companies that are responsible for them, but to the communities in which they occur as well. In Alberta, oil spills are primarily regulated by the EPA, which requires reporting of any substance release, regardless of quantity, that could potentially harm the environment. The release reporting regulation specifies what exactly needs to be reported, by when and to whom, and both the Alberta Energy Regulator and the Water Act have provisions for spill reports. So when a spill or release does occur, there's first the immediate reporting to the EPA, which contains any comments about adverse effects. These mean substances that can cause or may cause any impairment to the environment, human health, safety, or property. Then there's a report to Alberta Parks and Rec. Then there's a more detailed written report that's required. There's the containment as well of the actual spill. Then there's other regulations as well, the oil and gas conservation rules, pipeline acting rules, oil sands conservation rules, and the Dangerous Goods and Transport Handling Act, that all contain provisions for what happened in the case of the spill. So what are some specific scenarios that require biodegradable lubricants? In Alberta, these biodegradables are typically required or recommended in environmentally sensitive areas, particularly near water bodies and for certain types of equipment that operate in eco-sensitive areas. So this means any application where there's a significant risk of contamination to groundwater or surface water. For instance, any construction project, especially those near rivers and streams, must utilize biodegradable hydraulic fluids. Also in mining, agriculture, and forestry, there's some equipment that de facto needs to have biodegradable lubricants, greases, or fluids in it. What is acceptable in Alberta? Well, they should be an environmentally acceptable lubricant. They should be readily biodegradable. They should not accumulate in the environment. They should be free of any toxic additives. And most importantly, if we're requiring these pieces of equipment to have these biodegradables in them, there needs to be a full range of those products. So we have those. We have a full range of biodegradable lubricants that simultaneously protect the environment and actually perform better than their mineral counterparts. All with the correct certifications that Alberta requires. Just to kind of prove that biodegradables can operate under the most extreme conditions, we'll look super quickly at a mine in Val-d'Or, Quebec. Starting in 2019, they changed their entire fleet over to biodegradables. With the success of that, they also then convinced subcontractors and suppliers who were on site that they must also use biodegradable fluids wherever possible to lower their environmental impact. So we believe that there's a significant regulatory alignment with what we offer, specifically in Alberta, when it comes to clean air, clean water, and the compliance advantage here is all of our products meet the EPA, the Water Act, and Alberta Energy Regulators requirement to report those spills. We see a market opportunity as stricter air and water regulations create demand for less harmful solutions. In construction, municipal road maintenance, and of course mining and the oil sands.
So we're here to connect with Alberta's industries and make a difference, creating a win-win for business and environment. If any of you, if these issues resonate and bring to mind any potential use case somewhere, please feel free to reach out, touch base with us, and let us know.
Thank you so much again for having us.
And now Kelly Charlotte, where's Kelly? Oh, Kelly is going to introduce Dimitri. I guess we didn't get
So I find myself in a unique position of introducing my boss, so I'm going to be very careful and say very nice things about him. I came to work with Dimitri a few years ago, and must say I have great appreciation for both his experience and his knowledge. You're going to discover today that he has been very involved both federally and provincially across Canada, and through the polling work that he does with Yorkville, you're going to see how much understanding there is and the depth of the understanding that he has to bring. So I'm going to let him do the rest of the talking, if that's okay, boss.
It's okay. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. When I was asked to come out and speak, I was told that I have to talk about the future of Alberta. And, just like Chinook's around here, it changes with the winds oftentimes. So why don't I tell you a little bit about the present and give you a few musings about what direction things are going in the future. First of all, let me just do a quick introduction of both companies as mentioned. The Yorkville Strategies and Maple Leaf Strategies, two separate but related companies. Yorkville Strategies, public opinion research, strategic insight, and Yorkville Strategies as government relations and public affairs work, or government relations and public affairs experts who deliver. Just a couple of quick thoughts about what we're up to these days. First of all, I'm going to show you the results of the survey that we just finished on the weekend. We conducted it over the weekend from Friday to Sunday of 620 people. That's what we do at Yorkville Strategies. We're looking at we're looking at conducting some research over the fall months into the upcoming municipal election to provide some insight and understanding of what's unfolding here in Calgary. It's going to be a very interesting election with all these councillors, the new seats and so forth, people leaving, and potentially a new mayor, potentially the same mayor. On the government relations side, we're pleased today actually to announce a new senior associate or strategic advisor, Nick Young, who was the finance minister and held various other cabinet positions in British Columbia. So he joined our Western team yesterday, and we're looking at August and September doing some seminars here and in British Columbia on making a budget submission. So if any of you have interest in making a submission to the government for an ask in the budget, those would be very useful. So without further ado, and taking you we've had a lot going on this year. We had a federal election. We've had some by-elections yesterday. So never a shortage of things to talk about and do here in Alberta. And Alberta's very lucky. It's a very fortunate place. I'm originally from Ottawa. I've lived in Alberta. I spent a lot of time here. I currently live in BC. I would say in my heart I'm a Calgarian. But love keeps me in British Columbia and all that great stuff. So, but Alberta has terrific, some really terrific advantages. We've got the opportunity here with a lot of economic growth. This is really the economic engine of the country right now. British Columbia has that opportunity, and I think squandered it to a great extent. So that leaves Alberta standing alone in terms of the economy of the country and actually being a true engine of the country. As a result, or maybe as a result of the other things, contribute to it. We have lower taxes here in Alberta. It's better for entrepreneurs, better for individuals. Overall, just more attractive climate, not only in taxes, but also in terms of regulatory matters too. It's still, despite, as you'll see, words public opinion to the contrary, relative to, say, Ontario and British Columbia, a very affordable place to live. Housing affordability is much better than it is in either of those two places in the cities. And Albertans, I think, experience a high quality of life. It's tremendous appreciation of the outdoors, easy access to getting to places from here, both by car in terms of if you like the mountains or the country, and by plane with two world-class airports. So very fortunate to live here. Lots of advantages to being in Alberta. Of course, with that come challenges, and I think the challenges start to beg the question of what's next. So jump to that. First one is population growth and infrastructure. Obviously, we've seen Alberta has been one of the fastest growing provinces, the fastest growing province in the country for a few years now. People come here because of the advantages that it offers, and with that comes infrastructure challenges. Whether it's public infrastructure, roads and sewers and that sort of stuff, the construction infrastructure of new home construction and so forth. There's a second one is the tension between the economy and the environment. Obviously, the tremendous reliance on natural resources and the countervailing kind of pressure of greater environmental regulations and the like, particularly coming from Ottawa. Fossil fuel dependence, and I mean that not in a negative way. I should say dependency. That the province is highly reliant on fossil fuels as part of the economic mix, and that creates a little bit of a roller coaster, which I think the public has opinions about, as we'll see. An uncertain investment climate. We've seen this a lot recently with ESG that has taken place in some of the financial institutions not wanting to touch oil and gas investment, questions around what net zero and other federal regulations due to the viability of the provincial economy, long-term viability. You know, as many of you in the room understand, a lot of these investments aren't 5-year investments, they're 50-year investments. And if you don't have that kind of investment certainty, it causes challenges. Access to markets, pipelines, as we always hear about, balanced budget, which has been a bit of a challenge of late, and finally, you know, the addiction, opioid addiction issue in the province and nationwide, but you know, it's a challenge everywhere, and it's worthy of mentioning everywhere. And Alberta has some very specific challenges on that, which the government is managing. So, no shortage of challenges. Great place to be, but you know, that's a upcoming event. So you know, just a quick sort of brush on some of the 2 or 3 of the big things that are happening this year. First of all, the Premier announced yesterday the Alberta Next panel, which is going to be touring the province over the next few months between July and October, and talking to Albertans about what Alberta's role is and should be in the Federation, and where we think we should go. What's we as a spiritual Albertan here. Federal-provincial relationship. The election of Carney seems to have changed the tone, at least for now. And where that happens will be anyone's guess. This remains to be seen, and I have some thoughts on that. And Alberta-BC relations. David Eby initially was a little bit more accommodating, and now has become a little bit less accommodating to Alberta. AHS restructuring, which is going on with the 4 ministries now, that hopefully you know, it will offer a different path, a different solution to improving the healthcare system. Again, Alberta is not alone in that challenge. It's a national problem in every jurisdiction. And finally, municipal elections here in the fall, which I alluded to earlier. So lots going on. So let me just quickly touch on, we had 3 by-elections this week, and just want to talk about the results of 2 of them. I'm not going to touch on the Nancy's by-election, because I think that was a bit of a foregone conclusion. It doesn't really say a lot. What we see is, first of all, the number of votes cast between the general and the by-election is about a third fewer votes cast in a by-election. That's pretty typical of by-elections, low turnout. But a couple of things worth noting. First of all, the light blue box, 18%, that was the Republican Party in Alberta. And the NDP held on to the exact same percentage, 1 percentage point difference as to what they had in the last election. Now, I don't know, some of you may think that number is high, 18% is high, some of you may think it's low. I think it's low, and I'll explain why in a moment. Let me just quickly jump to the other by-election, the Edmonton Ellerslie by-election, where we saw the NDP vote share shrink from 62 to 51. We saw the Conservatives go up by a point, the Republicans come up by 3, and then various other parties, Liberals, Wildrose, whatever they're called, and so forth, pick up about 7% of the vote there. What stands out to me in all of this, kind of when you look at this, and I've worked on a few elections in my life, I won't go through them all. But first of all, the NDP in opposition was not really able to gain traction in those 2 ridings. They held at best constant, and they actually slipped in the other 2 riding, which is pretty atypical for an opposition party. The opposition party to do better in by-elections because it's a vote against something. It's a vote against the government's agenda at that point in time. The second thing I would observe is the 3% that the Republican Party got in Ellerslie versus the 18% they got in Didsbury. This was supposedly the best shot for the separatist movement in the province. It's the only riding in the province that ever voted for separatists. Thank you. So ever voted for a separatist. They put their leader in it. They put all the king's horses and all the king's men into it to try to get MPs elected, and they weren't successful. And they were not only not successful, but they managed to only get less than 20% of the vote in a by-election. So that doesn't bode well for them, just pure and simple. That said, I'll talk about this in a moment. Not to say that Albertans are totally happy with the status quo right now. In fact, I would argue that they're fairly unhappy and hopeful that something will change. But and obviously should be vigilant if you're not a Republican Party supporter, if you're a UCP supporter, which I am, that they should be vigilant and ensure things. But typically the way things happen with these sort of like third parties is they do best in the ridings where their competitive party is strongest and worse in the party where they're weakest. So getting 18% in a riding where the UCP gets 75% in a typical election doesn't actually help them. And by the same token, there's probably a few ridings in the middle where the ballots were decided, the vote was decided by a few ballots where, you know, a small number of separatist votes could actually turn a riding one way or the other, split the vote on someone else. And that will be the challenge that they face. The challenge of them being elected is not great. So let me get into some of the polling stuff. I'm conscious of time, and we'll leave time for some questions and answers and thoughts from you folks. We asked, first of all, a question on the most important issue facing the province today. And clearly what we see is, given the opportunity to give their own opinion without us giving them suggestions, healthcare, cost of living, and the economy and unemployment are the top three issues, with healthcare and cost of living being the top two. This is not atypical for anywhere in Canada right now. I would argue in some places inflation, cost of living are higher. In other places, economy and unemployment are higher than they are here. But what you see is the economy and even affordability of housing is not a top of mind issue. It's really comes down to services and cost of living sort of writ large, cost of everything going up. We then gave people a list of items and we asked them to rate them on it's a 7-point scale. In fact, I only show the top three, which are the important side of it. And what you see is overall, and I've ranked them by people who said extremely important: improved access to healthcare, improving the economy, improving affordability for the middle class, dealing with poverty and homelessness. All of these are pocketbook issues, reducing taxes, then we get into jobs, dealing with opioid overdoses and drug addictions, protecting the environment, reducing provincial spending, and dealing with climate change are the bottom three. So you kind of see where the environmental issues fit in relative to pocketbook, healthcare, and economic, broad economic issues here. And so that's obviously the leanings or the direction I think that Albertans see things going or want to see things going. We then asked two questions about Mark Carney. Obviously, he's the new Prime Minister. And I wanted to get a bit of a sense of how people see him. First of all, are they favorable or unfavorable towards him? So on the favorability side, 46% have a favorable opinion of him, 31% have an unfavorable opinion of him. When you look at, let's see if I can use the pointer here, if that works. When we look at, showing up on the screen? There we go. Look at the extremes: 19% with very favorable opinion, 18% with very unfavorable opinion. 2/3 or more, I guess 2/3, are somewhere kind of like, a little bit positive, a little bit negative, or like let's wait and see. There's a fair amount of public, reticence, maybe mild optimism, maybe mild pessimism, which is the next question actually. My own thunder. On the right-hand side, we ask people, what do you think? What are your expectations about how Alberta will fare under the new Prime Minister? And we see 47% say that we'll fare well, or they're optimistic about how we'll fare, and 40% are pessimistic about how we'll fare. And once again, 20% are very pessimistic, and 16% are very optimistic. So when you look at the intensity, a little bit more intense towards the pessimism side, and but generally overall a little bit more optimistic than pessimistic. This will ultimately be the proof in the pudding for Carney, because, as I said earlier, he's put a lot of little bobbles in the window. I'll give you two examples, or a couple of examples. Number one, he put Tim Hodgson in as his Minister of Energy. Tim comes from, act like I know that. Minister Hodgson comes from Goldman Sachs, and he's a deal maker. So Carney put a guy in who wants to actually make something happen. It remains to be seen what he wants to see happen, but I don't think he put him in there because he wants to stop things, right? On the other hand, Stephen Guilbeault is still there talking about, musing about environmental matters, and I don't believe any of this is an accident, by the way. Guilbeault comes out and makes his comments about the environment, and even Gregor Robertson coming out and talking about housing policy. I think these were telegraphed, whether you call them trial balloons or kind of smoke signals to people about where they're actually heading. there's that portion of it. Then the next move that he made was he put in the head of the former, well, as one of his chief of staff, I believe it was, Michael Sabia, who came from Quebec and from the Quebec pension world. So my view on this is that, this is my personal view, my view on this is what Carney wants to do is Carney wants to get some wins. And Carney realizes that his path to majority lies through Quebec. So, and you know, why do I believe this? How many seats are up for grabs in Alberta if they were to have an election again? Notwithstanding what we see here, I think the answer is not many. Maybe there's another seat, maybe there are another 2 seats. He needs 3 seats to get to a majority, but you know, I don't think he'll be happy if he gets 3 more seats. There's not a lot left in British Columbia for them to get. In fact, I think they kind of went down to where they're supposed to be, and they might lose another seat or 2 there if there were a re-election, depending on circumstance. But it's not very lucrative for them. Saskatchewan is Saskatchewan. It's going to be what's going to be. They're not getting there. Manitoba, same thing. That leaves them with Ontario and Quebec. They pretty much tapped out everything they can get out of Atlantic Canada. So that leaves them with Ontario and Quebec. Ontario, they're holding about what Liberals typically hold in Ontario. So that then pushes everything into Quebec. The bloc is relatively weak and rudderless. So I think he sees his opportunities there. So that's the commentary that goes far beyond the numbers, but I just wanted to say, you know, there's some slight reasons for optimism in that they've got Hodgson there, and I think a lot of reasons for being cautious in terms of how the PMO is structured and others around him. We then asked some questions about where Alberta should, about some of the policies, I guess, that Alberta should pursue. We asked two groups of questions. The first one is, do you strongly support, some oppose, or strongly oppose each of the following policies or programs being considered by the government of Alberta? And we try to pick from some of the stuff that would be relevant to folks in this room and also relevant to the public. So we chose 4. The first one, and when I say the first one, we randomized these, so it's not, you know, they're in order of support. Diversifying the economy away from oil and gas is actually the most supported statement or policy. The reason for that is, I think that, and we've seen this, I've been doing polling in Alberta for a number of years, and this has always been more on is that people see the roller coaster and they want stability. They like the oil and gas, they understand where our prosperity comes from in Alberta, but they're like, okay, can we have something to even this out a little bit? Because I don't like my stomach gets woozy when we go over the roller coaster. The next one is restructuring the healthcare system. That should be self-explanatory given all the other stuff that we saw before. Becoming an energy superpower, and then finally, the Premier news about building more rail in the province. Even that's getting slight majority support, and there's no real opposition to any of these things. So generally speaking, the public are supportive of all of these things. In particular, you know, it's not oil and gas or something else. It's oil and gas and something else, and a healthcare system that actually works, which would be really nice in this country. Speaking as someone who's a consumer sometimes. Then I should have said Alberta next, but of course I'm not that smart. I pulled some of the ideas out of the Premier's speech from a few weeks back when she first launched the Alberta Next idea, and we asked people if they strongly support or strongly oppose each of the following aspects of the Alberta Next proposal. First one, the most popular one, was renegotiating transfer payments so that transfer payments are allocated on a per capita basis, strict per capita basis, which is one of the concerns that Alberta has. 45% of people strongly support that. The next one is changing equalization so that Alberta is not subsidizing Ontario and Quebec. 40% strongly support, 23% strongly support, so 63% overall. Canceling the no new pipelines, and I went through the list of the tanker ban, no new pipelines, and net zero mandate. The draft was too small for all 3 of them. Again, 57% support that. And finally, the one that was least popular, and I think it's because it bears a lot of explaining, is you can't explain these things easily. Getting out of federal mandates and keeping the funds. So, for example, the child care program, where the federal government dictates if you want this money, you have to offer the program that we quote unquote agree on. And the public's pretty split on that. I think they're split because it's a social program that exists that they take part of it. So what's next for Alberta? I guess there's sort of 3 or 4 areas. Number one, is this an opportunity to reset the relationship with Ottawa? And I've already, I think, mused a little bit about that prematurely. And the question is, do we get a new deal with Ottawa, or do we go in a new direction with Ottawa? Secondly, refocusing healthcare will be, I think, a major issue over the next couple of years. And it's the third rail of Canadian politics, and it's interesting that the government is taking this on out of necessity, and I hope they're successful. But it's not without risk, right? It's not without tremendous peril. The third sort of thing is the legacy projects that this government has put out, and how they come to fruition. And it's everything from like becoming a thing to talk about energy superpower diversification, the APP idea, rail connectors commitments in Calgary, Calgary, Banff, Edmonton, and downtown Calgary, airports in downtown big cities, and finally stadiums, which we've had some conversation about through that. It's for fun. And the final question of what's next for Alberta is that in the first time since, it seems anyway at this point, things continue at this pace, and who knows if things change like going here, that Premier Smith will be the first premier to face re-election since Rob Klein. So pretty, when you think about strong conservative in Alberta, we've got a lot of uncertainty that happens, and the one constant in this province is the uncertainty. So with that, I will open up to questions, comments, suggestions, criticisms. I think.